Freedom Fighter Radio coming to you live from the heart of the Great White North, the heart of the True North, strong and free. Mic test. Hello, hello. Are we coming across live and clear, loud and clear out there, folks? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. We've been doing a lot of troubleshooting this morning. That's the reason we're starting late, folks. But let me listen to our monitor here. Sounds like Oh, there you go. Sounds like my phone is telling me that we're coming loud and clear out there, folks. Today, we're going to talk about how Doug Ford has taken away the choices from Ontarians in terms of buying whatever they want. Because he is trying to wage this trade war with the American president, and he's virtue signaling that he is the hero of Canada. Instead of relying on you to make your choices, the right choices to choose Canadian products from the shelf, he says, please choose Canadian, but he took away the alternative choice. He took away all of the American products from the shelves. So, how is that a choice that he's asking you to make for yourselves? I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. This is Freedom Fighter Radio. Welcome to the show. Thank you. Please share. Let's get the show started right now.
Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa! Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
I am Derek Sloan, the leader of the Ontario Party. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Canada podcast, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm Pastor Arthur from Calgary. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Worldwide podcast, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful.
Yes.
Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Hi, Ordinary
Mr.
Joe.
Polyev, how are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you, Ordinary Joe?
For the best price in town on your flooring, call Complete Flooring. The unique shop-at-home experience means samples are brought right to your door, and because we don't pay salesmen, there's no markup on our products. Complete Flooring does the installation of new hardwood floors and sands them using a dustless machine, making the sanding process cleaner. We also specialize in refinishing, staining, and custom staining of existing hardwood floors. Our Green Guard certified environmentally friendly finish is now available. Drying in a quarter of the time of regular stains means you can get back in your house sooner, and it will last longer. If you're a homeowner, general contractor, or a building or property manager, Complete Flooring services are available to you. So give us a call today.
Hello. Good afternoon, Freedomizers from coast to coast, all across, from sea to sea in Canada and from sea to sea in the United States and the rest of the world. Thank you for joining me today. We spent a couple of hours troubleshooting this morning. That's the reason we are not broadcasting live in the morning and instead a little later in the afternoon here. 2:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining me today. I was wondering if I believe that if the setup was successful, there is an option for our Facebook tuners that on the bottom of the live cast, there's supposed to be some sort of poll. There is a question on Facebook. I don't know if it's working on your side because I couldn't see it on my side. There is a poll and there are some questions. I believe I cannot see it anymore. But when I was setting this live cast up this morning, the question on the live cast was, do you think that Doug Ford is a Canadian hero for waging a trade war against the United States? All of these virtue signal from Doug Ford are all just, I think, just all posturing and just trying to create some brownie points, brownie political points. But he knows full well that we're not going to win any trade wars with the United States. And last minute, 2 nights ago, before the implementation, supposed to be yesterday, Tuesday, supposed to be the first day of the implementation of that steep 25% tariff to all Canadian products coming into the United States, supposed to be officially starting yesterday. But on the 11th hour, Monday night, Justin Trudeau was able to muster up some humility, and they have witnessed how the Mexican president got a suspension or postponement of the tariffs, 25% tariff that also has to supposed to be starting on Tuesday yesterday as well for Mexico, but on the 11th hour, well, earlier, not 11th hour, maybe the 10th or the 9th hour before the deadline, Mexico got a suspension of the scheduled tariff to be imposed on all Mexican products coming into the United States. But the Mexican president showed some humility, and the Canadian leaders are trying to win their own base at home, virtue signaling to their electorate or their voters at home, fakely gesturing, posturing that they are tough men who's standing up for Canadian interest when we know they're not. Because we already tried to clarify to all of our Canadian listeners that when Trudeau, and on a local level, we're going to discuss what Ford did, which is removing American products from the shelves in LCBO. For our American listeners, we have such a blatant fascistic government in Canada, especially in Ontario, where the Ontario government is running private, they're running the liquor stores. They're actually running the liquor stores selling private brands. And so it's called LCBO in Ontario. I think they got similar counterpart in other provinces of liquor boards in other provinces where the government has went into business with the public in selling liquor. So the government of Ontario is the one selling liquor to the residents of Ontario, but a retaliatory move that our premier, similar to your governor in the United States, our premier Doug Ford in Ontario, decided that he is going to help the Canadian consumers decide. Initially, he said, please choose Canadian as our retaliatory response to the American tariffs. But what choice did he give to the Canadian Ontarians when what he did was remove all of the American brands from the liquor stores? I do not promote liquor. I haven't had a drop of liquor for about 3-4 years. And I was never been a big drinker growing up. I only started drinking when I got a job in the financial industry, and everybody in the office must drink with their clients in my late 40s. And, I almost get addicted to red wine, but I haven't had a drop of red wine for a long, long time. Oh, I had half a glass on Christmas Day, 2024, but for years I haven't had. So I do not. This is not about. Today's episode is not about calling out Doug Ford regarding promotion of certain brands of alcohol. The idea is government coming in and deciding for the people what kind of brands and what kind of products people should be buying from the stores by taking out in behalf of the consumers. The government, the governor, the premier is taking out the alternative choice. I don't see that to be in any way, any shape or form, an expression of democracy or capitalistic open market. That is fascism. That is fascism. Yeah, but there's that is only one of the many things that we can talk about right now, because that is very current. But there are so many fascistic situation that we have been experiencing this past 4-5 years, and a lot of people don't seem to understand what's going on in front of us. There's so many buttons to press here on the studio. As I said, that all of our live production will be radio style audio, but I am supposed to be recording this on video as well offline, and I keep on forgetting to press many buttons that needs to be pressed when we go live. So I'm just doing that right now, and it interrupts the flow here to do that. Before we continue on, I just want to say to our listeners, we really want to be not relevant in terms of like the news cycle, but what's relevant in the what needs to be expressed, relevant situation in our society. We're not trying to chase the news cycle temperature on the Freedom Fighter Radio. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're weighing in on things that is fundamental assault on our freedoms, our choice, supposed to be open society, open market, things like this. Subliminally, a lot of people are deceived to think that this is okay. But you won't hear anybody from the CBC, from the CTV, Global. Those are the mega channels, mega news channels in Canada. But even in the United States, including Fox and CNN and MSNBC and ABC, wouldn't articulate out loud when governments are doing fascistic actions, pushing the vaccine, the vaccines. We'll speak in code so that we don't get, because we are live on Rumble, YouTube, Locals, BitChute, and Odyssey. Thank God that the Odyssey, I was a little worried about our Odyssey channel earlier because it told me that it already. Anyways, I won't bore you with the details, but We want to be timely, although we are not trying to chase and go with the wind and blow with the wind where the news cycle decides where it wants to go. Folks, we know that the intelligence community emanating from the United States, the Operation Mockingbird, if you're familiar with that, that's how the CIA had weaponized mainstream media so that they can push their narrative using talking heads in news media outlet, but those are scripted um, news broadcasts that the demagogues, the social engineer, are just giving script to talking heads in 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. news broadcasts, and they decide where the focus of the news cycle should be looking at. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is to talk about, even though it is in the news cycle, to talk about how the news people are trying to normalize things that are not supposed to be normal. They're not calling it out. They're not really doing their jobs as um, the the check and balance, the fifth estate, to hold the feet of the powerful to the fire. We all know that they're not doing that. If you are awake freedomizer, if you're a brother or a sister in the fight and in the faith, from the United States, from Canada, from all across the world, if you're awake already, you already know that. You already know that. So just before I get really deep into talking about this assault on Ontarians against their free will to choose for themselves, I'm not promoting American brand versus Canadian brand of beers. That's not what this is about. This is about allowing people to have freedom to choose for themselves, right? And yes, you can create campaigns to discourage the consumers to choose a certain product if you're trying to create a statement that yes, we can try and hurt your by the way, that's an effort to futility anyways, when Doug Ford was saying, or even the federal government saying, oh, we're gonna hurt the Americans, where we're gonna hit them back where it hurts. Nothing that the Canadian economy can do, the Canadian prime minister can do. And this is not self-deprecating. I'm just being really practical from a practical point of view. There's nothing we can do from an economic tactics to hurt any American industry. Nothing whatsoever. I'm just being truthful. I have an affinity to Canada. I've been living in Canada since 1993. I have a strong um, sense of protecting this country. My daughter is growing up in this country, and my daughter is 1,000% Canadian. She has very little understanding of Filipino culture, So we're letting her, we're allowing her to be defined 1,000% Canadian. And when she grows up on her own, if she decides to understand more about her ethnic heritage, then it's up to her to explore and understand the identity of how it is to be Filipino. But we'll leave it for her to choose that. But because she lives here and she's growing up with Canadian classmates and Canadian community, we allow her to define her personhood based on Canadian identity, Canadian heritage. That's the reason yesterday I am condemning fellow Canadians who were booing the American national anthem at a one of the recent NBA game between the Toronto Raptors and I believe my wife told me it is LA Clippers, where in the beginning of the game that the Raptors fans were booing the American national anthem. That is abominable in my opinion. Booing, especially a friend nation, booing their national anthem is an assault to to their identity, an insult to people's identity, because a national anthem, maybe some Canadians wouldn't feel so attached to their own national anthem. Unfortunately, even the Canadian Prime Minister during the convoy, the Freedom Convoy here in Canada, started vilifying the Canadian flag as as a symbol of extremist symbol. They're trying to tout that among liberals here in Canada. So it is possible that a lot of young people or even older people, especially if they're in the libtard segment of society, they don't see how important it is. It is sacred for any patriotic members of any national identity to never ever insult someone's national anthem, because a person's patriotic duty to his nation, he has to protect his national anthem. And I know a lot of Canadians pretend that they are proud to be Canadian, but they don't even understand. They don't even know exactly what makes them proud Canadians. And so if somebody insults the Canadian national anthem or the Canadian flag, a lot of these Canadians who goes to Raptor games, they don't care. So because they don't have that kind of protective sense to Canadian identity, because it's very weak, a lot of Canadians have very weak affinity to the Canadian heritage. They pretend to be proud to be Canadians just by virtue of the arrogance that they a lot of Canadians I hear, oh, I'm proud Canadian. Oh, but if you dig deeper, why are you a proud Canadian? Well, because I'm not an American. That's all. That's it. And you're telling me that your source of Canadian pride is by insulting or booing the American national anthem. I know that, especially the generations before me, you cannot insult the Philippine national anthem. You cannot boo the Philippine national anthem because a lot of Filipino has a serious attachment to the Philippine national anthem. You can go to war by insulting the Philippine national anthem. And I know that the Americans probably have the same kind of emotional attachment to to the American national anthem. So for Canadians who don't care about their own Canadian national anthem, or who pretends they care about their Canadian heritage or Canadian identity, which I know for a fact that a lot of Canadians don't even understand their own Canadian identity and they don't care about Canadian patriotism. Honestly, I'm just being truthful, folks. I've been living in Canada for almost 30 years. And I still have to find ordinary Canadians until the Freedom Convoy. I couldn't find any Canadians who really have that kind of strong Canadian pride, Canadian identity running down their veins. I only saw true Canadian patriotism during the Canadian Truckers Convoy. That's the only time. But for the general public, A lot of Canadians who would say, I'm a proud Canadian. And you ask them, why are you proud Canadian? What is it about being Canadian that you're proud of? They won't be able to tell you anything. Maybe they will say Sing Hortons. They're proud because of Sing Hortons. It's mostly affiliated on products that they, maybe backpacking in Europe, they would have a Canadian flag or a Canadian patch on their backpack, and that's what makes them proud as Canadian. What about heritage? What about your history? Do you even know your history? A lot of Canadians don't know Canadian history. And so the only way they can muster some Canadian pride is by insulting American national anthem or insulting other people. And I can see that even some members of the so-called freedom movement, they are borderline racist, and that's the only way they can muster up some Canadian pride. And they associate their race or the color of their skin as their source of Canadian pride. Very, very shallow. Very shallow. So anyways, we can see that from Canadian leaders as well. When we all know that Trudeau do not have any sort of pride for being Canadian whatsoever. He already declared that he has strong affinity and strong admiration for the Communist Party, the totalitarian kind of dictatorship, basic dictatorship of Chinese Communist Party. And it's all on record that Trudeau said that he doesn't believe in Canadian nationalism because he is a post-national, woke, progressive demagogue. He declared that Canada is a post-national Canada. That's why he is embracing all kinds of multicultural imports of all kinds of immigration from countries that has cultural, religious, and just practical hostility towards the Canadian values, because he's a post-national Canadian. He declared that. Trudeau is truly a post-national Canadian. If you're post-national, how could you even call yourself Canadian? Because these people, they trample upon the Canadian flag. Well, not physically, but I'm talking about symbolically. They trample upon the Canadian flag. I believe it's 2023 when they said, when Trudeau said, cancel the Canada Day and do not distribute the those little Canadian flag that you can wave with just tiny handheld flags, paper flags. They made that illegal in Ottawa for the 2023 Canada Day, canceled Canada Day altogether, and even issued a memorandum that watch out for people who's carrying Canadian flags, because Canadian flags is now the modern day symbol of extremism. Just because the truckers convoy really love the flag, really proud to be Canadians, those are true, authentic Canadian pride. The ones we saw from the trucker convoy participants, those who stand on guard for according to our national anthem. But a lot of Canadians don't even understand the words in the national anthem, the Canadian national anthem. And so they can only muster up a sense of Canadian pride by insulting other people, insulting other people of other heritage. That's the only way they think. I remember going to when I first arrived in Canada. I initially went to a predominantly black church, and let me preface this by reiterating what I said about for the first 15 years, a little less than 15 years. I came to Canada in 1993. Oh, no, more than 15 years. My math is not so good. So until 2015. So how many years were that? I first arrived in Canada in 1993 and never experienced any sort of blatant racism. Mild racism, you cannot avoid that. There's a little bit of that everywhere, even in churches. But I'll give you an example of a mild racist experience I had as a newcomer or as a new Canadian. But let me reiterate what a statement that I already established in many episodes prior. I said that I never experienced blatant racism in Canada. It's classism that is the problem in Canada. But yes, there are some mild racism that you can. It's just, I guess, it's just ubiquitous in every country. Every country has some level of racism, but I don't think it's a serious problem in Canada. There's not a high elevation of racial tension in Canada until 2015, until Trudeau became the prime minister. Virtually, there's no racial tension or racial issues. But when Trudeau came on board to be the prime minister of this country, they really magnify racial issues. They made it front and center problem. That's because of the critical race theory that they started teaching in public schools too. But anyways, so again, let me reiterate that in my opinion, there was never been a significant or any meaningful racial tensions, racism in Canada until 2015. Instead, the strong classism is what, in my personal experience, is what I see to be the real problem, cultural problem in Canada. Right? And now I forgot why I'm setting this up because I took too long to set it up. But anyways, yeah. So let me preface everything with that opinion. But yes, mild racism. The mild racism that I experienced was when when I was in youth group as a young adult. I think I was maybe 22, 23 when I went to predominantly black church, and there were some white friends, young people, and one of my closest Caucasian friend in that church. One time he got offended by something, and he blabbered with his mouth, "Why are you treating me this way? Do you think I'm black? Do you see me? Do you see me as so?" So indirectly, he was saying, "Don't treat me badly because I'm white." That's what he was saying. Because I think he told it to one of our other friends. "Look at me. Am I black?" That's what he was saying. So don't treat me bad, or don't treat me. He was saying is treat me with high respect because I'm not black. That's what he was saying. Well, anyways, he's a young person, and so not mature enough to understand. I guess some young people, they hear it from their adults and they just repeat what they hear. So that's forgivable, That is nothing serious. Some people just have a slip of the tongue because they were not taught right. It doesn't always pertain to white people being racist, but just some individuals are, or they just less educated or less culturally sensitive because some people grew up in the countryside, in the prairies, where they're not exposed to a lot of people from other ethnic backgrounds. So those are forgivable mistakes. I'm just giving that that example to demonstrate that there is really no racial tension in my personal experience. However, there are a lot of people that they associate their patriotism, not because of they have an understanding of Canadian culture, Canadian heritage, or even Canadian history. They only identify as Canadian simply because they're Caucasian. Because traditionally, before the Europeans came in and annihilated the natives so that they can settle, they feel like might is right. They are the ones who are the dominant force of Canada, and Canadian identity is Caucasian. If you're not Caucasian, then you're not Canadian. So a lot of you listening to me, you do not think this way, but there are certain segments of our society that's the only source of their pride and self-esteem is the color of their skin. Let's just I'm not saying this to point out a racial my vocabulary is so poor today, but it's not a racial slur. I'm not trying to slight Caucasian people. I love some of my best friends are white people and black people too. So when I first arrived in Canada, I went to a predominantly black church for about 2 years. But the vast majority of my church life in Canada, I belonged to a predominantly white church. And eventually it became very mixed church because some of us who are non-Caucasian members of that church help in growing the church. And we and I personally was in charge of the university students for that church. And University of Toronto is very diverse. So a lot of university students who came to my groups, a lot of them are Singaporean, Koreans, Africans, and some of the other fellow Filipino leaders, they reach out to the Filipino community. So there's an influx of Filipinos that came to our church. But when we first got involved in this church, now known as Toronto Caesar Church, back then it was called Covenant Christian Church. It was predominantly a white church for about 3-4 years before we were able to help grow the church with diverse new members, newcomers. So I am not in any way whatsoever slighting or vilifying the Caucasian race. I love Caucasian people, some of my best friends. And even today, vast majority of my daughter's classmates are all Caucasian families here in our neighborhood, because our neighborhood where we live in Midtown are predominantly Caucasian. There's no other colored people in the school that she goes to. She's the only Filipino in the entire grade 8, and the entire school, junior junior high school, no, not junior high school, but the junior elementary grade school, the entire junior grade school where she goes to, for many years there's only her and another girl who were Filipinos, and maybe 2-3 black kids, and the vast majority of the kids in her school are predominantly Caucasians. So I'm just reestablishing with all of my listeners, I'm pointing something out, not because I'm trying to vilify or put down the Caucasian race or the white race. I'm just saying I just stating the fact that there are some people who identify as Canadian simply because they were born in Canada, they got a Canadian passport, or they think their identity for being Canadian is because the color of their skin. Nothing nothing more than that. Or they play hockey, or they love the Toronto Maple Leafs, or they drink Tim Hortons, or they say A, or they eat poutine. I mean, honestly, if you talk to an American and ask them why you're proud to be an American, they can tell you all the history of America, fighting for their freedoms. If you ask a Filipino what makes you proud as a Filipino, they know the history of the Philippines fighting for their freedom. Two revolutions. We fought against the Spaniards. We fought against the Japanese. We actually did fought against the Americans too, until because there's always two Americas, right? The New World Order America, the Deep State America, and the real authentic American spirit that runs in the veins of many Americans, especially MAGA Americans. Those are authentic American. They're not the deep state American. Anyways, it is unfortunate that many Canadians only identify and they're proud to be Canadian by the products, the brands that they use, Roots, Arc'teryx, and they go to Canadian Tire store. That's it? Is that your pride for being Canadian? You understand hockey and you play hockey. What happened in Canada when the NBA, the very first NBA team, I think there were two initially, but the only one that exists right now is the Toronto Raptors. Canada only has one NBA team. But as soon as the Toronto Raptors became a team, the size of basketball fans in Canada is probably 10 times bigger than the hockey. Although Canadians pride themselves as a hockey country, right? But the Toronto Maple Leafs are always failing to make it to the championship. It's it's pathetic. The Toronto Maple Leafs is pathetic in the NHL. Yes, there's a lot of Canadians who play for other American teams, but I don't want to go down this rabbit trail. I'm just trying to state the fact that a lot of Canadians don't understand why they should be proud to be Canadians. And so because they don't understand truly why they need to, what is about being Canadian that they should be proud of. Because you cannot tell me because Canada has beautiful mountain range and beautiful rivers. That's ubiquitous in any country. Every country that has beautiful natural resource, beautiful rivers, beautiful mountains. You cannot say you're proud to be Canadian because you have beautiful mountains and rivers and lakes. You cannot say that. Because those beautiful nature has nothing to do with your heritage. Those are God-given. Right? You have a lot of oil, that's God-given. That God created that. Not your liberal government, not your conservative government created that. Why are you proud of your Canadian heritage? Do you understand what it is about being Canadian that you should be proud about? And because a lot of Canadians don't know why they should be proud about their being Canadian, the only way they can muster up any pride for their Canadian heritage is by insulting and booing the American national anthem. That is pathetic. If you think that your patriotic duty, if you think that you are now a proud Canadian because you boo the American national anthem, you are pathetic. Just because you took away the American branded beers at LCBO, And some people will really think, because of the virtue signaling patriotism, the fake patriotism that Doug Ford is demonstrating, a lot of people will really, gullible Canadians will really think that, hey, Doug Ford is our hero. He's standing up against Donald Trump by taking away American beer from the LCBO. Seriously? Well, I know that my listeners on the Freedom Fighter Radio, the freedomizers of this country, those who went to the Freedom Convoy, they're the real Canadian patriots because they're standing on guard for our rights and freedoms as Canadians. And some people who spoke against the Freedom Convoy are now trying to get on the Freedom train because they've been proven to be stupid by vilifying the freedomizers that went to Ottawa in 2022 to stand on guard for our rights and freedoms. So we can see this cancer, this social cancer of many Canadians do not understand their Canadian heritage, do not know Canadian history. And here's one more thing. When I studied Canadian history at the University of Toronto, it's very sad that the entire Canadian history book revolves around the sequence of the development of business and entrepreneurship. Although that is very good, kind of the entrepreneurial spirit of creating business and growing businesses in Canada. But a lot of the history books are all focused on those things. But what about real Canadian heroes who will die, who will give up their lives to fight for the Canadian heritage, the Canadian national identity? There's so many wrong things about our history. That's why a lot of Canadians right now don't have an identity crisis. They don't know why they need to fight for their country and even to die for this country, because those are the words of the national anthem, right? Well, maybe not, but in Filipino, how the Philippine national anthem ends. Let me remind myself. The words are in English translation. The last line in the Philippine national anthem is, "I will." So the Canadians is, "I will stand on guard for thee." But in Filipino, the Philippine national anthem ends with, "I will die for thee." I will die for thee. For your sake, I will give my life for the Philippine heritage. That's how the Philippine national anthem ends. The Canadian national anthem ends as to stand on guard for thee. Right? Let me get the national anthem again. I had it memorized, but I don't want to make a mistake. All right. So Canada. And they tried to change this. My friend's daughter was hired by Justin Trudeau in Canada 150. What year was that? Canada 150. We were in Ottawa actually that year when Canada was celebrating Canada 150. They changed the words. They wokenized the Canadian national anthem. And my friend's daughter, who is now a TV actress, she was the one, the Filipino girl. She was the one who sang that national anthem, the new version, wokenized version of the national anthem during the Canada 150 in Ottawa. We were there, and I was surprised that I saw her on stage right beside Justin Trudeau singing the new version the wokenized version. Anyways, right? How do you end the "Oh Canada" is "Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee." Right? You know what? Here, we're talking about Canadian pride. We are proud Canadians, according to Justin Trudeau and to Pierre Poilievre. We will never become the 51st state. You bully Trump, right? They're saying you bully Trump, because we will never be the 51st state of the United States because we are proud Canadians. Okay, good. I'm a proud Canadian, but I know why I'm a proud Canadian. But what about the rest of the vast majority of woke, progressive, libtard Canadians? Do you understand why you're proud Canadian? Or do you only feel proud when you insult the American national anthem, or you take away the choice of the people by taking away American brands from the store shelves? This is what Dogford is doing. And that is so wrong in many levels. We claim to be a democracy, a democratic, capitalistic, open market, and you're taking away the choice from people. Again, this is not a promotion or a support for American products or American brands. I do not care about alcohol, but I do care about giving the people choices, allowing people to choose for themselves. And I'm sure a lot of Canadians, especially those who listen to the CBC, they think that they are going to be proud Canadian by refusing the American brands. But let the people decide that for themselves. Not the premier, the governor of Ontario, which we call premier in Canada. And I have to translate this because we have a lot of American listeners. The governor of Ontario, it's not his place to be taking away American brands from the LCBO or our liquor stores as his patriotic duty. That is just against capitalistic, democratic, open market society. That is wrong in so many levels. That is just so wrong in many levels. That it is fascistic, it is communistic, it is totalitarian. You're telling you're telling us, the ordinary Jane and Joe members of Canadian society, that we cannot decide for ourselves. So you are going to choose for us. Well, he said, please choose Canadian. But what else can people do if you're not allowing people to choose for themselves, because you're taking away the competition? So for our American brothers and sisters, this is what our premier, our governor in Ontario is doing. They remove all of the American branded beers and liquors from the Canadian liquor stores, because our liquor stores in Canada, I'm not a big liquor fan, but our liquor stores in Canada are run by the province. Imagine if in the United States, the liquor stores are run by the state governors. Can you imagine that? Well, that's the kind of democracy we have in Canada, folks. Fascistic democracy. Demo-fascism. Anyways, let's see if our leaders, our Canadian leaders, are true to the reason. What are the fundamental or core value, Canadian core value, that they should be proud about? Is that what they're demonstrating? Let's see. O Canada, the national anthem of the Canadian heritage. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts, we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land. How could a progressive, wokist libtard sing this with sincerity, God keep our land, when they're first of all, they don't believe in God, or they anti-Christian, and they think that they should be God, right? They worship the king, but they don't worship God. So this line alone, I know that the progressive libtard, woke libtard leaders, and yes, they could be running in the conservative ticket, but they behave like libtards too. Like Doug Ford is a libtard. He is a reptilian libtard. You already know that they're not sincere. Just this line alone, you already it's given. It's a blatant giveaway right here. We could understand that Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, every libtard, and even some conservatives who do not believe in God, the Creator, we know already that they're not sincere when they sing. They're not sincere in their hearts. They probably open their mouths, but they don't feel it in their hearts, because their king, their God, is King Charles. That's their God. But God, the Creator, the God of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Father that Jesus Christ calls as his Father, the Christian God. They defy the Christian God. They vilify the Christian God. They don't respect the Christian God. They embrace the gods of the Khalistans and the Islams, right? So how could they are bringing in a great influx of migration from countries who do not believe in God. And even right now, I'm reading the words to the Canadian national anthem, and right here, a collage. I wish I could screenshot, but the sheet, the page of the national anthem that I'm reading from, it has some graphic designs, and the graphic design that it has is on the right side of the page. There's a maple leaf with a collage of photos, and in the center of the photo is a Khalistani man with the red turban, and that's the symbol. This is the kind of Canada that they want to redefine. The Trudeau types, Trudeau and his ilk. This is the kind of Canada that this is what he means by post-nationalist Canada. So he is not even sincere when he sings the national anthem, right? Because right here it says, "God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee." There are no politicians, even from both the left and the right, both the conservatives and the libtards. None of them are standing on guard for thee, because both Poilievre and Trudeau wants to flood our countries with migration, with migrants from hostile nations. They reject with pride. We will never be the 51st state of America, but they are open to allowing Canada to be a Khalistan, the brand new Khalistan. Do you guys know the history of the Khalistanis? So in India, because they have about 1 billion people, of course, because there's a lot of, their population is so big, there will be sectors in the Indian society that do not believe in Hinduism, although that is the predominant religion in India, is Hindu. Hindu Indians are the vast majority. There are Christian Indians, they're a minority. But two big minorities are Muslim Indians and so the Muslim Indians, they became Palestine, or no, sorry. Let me step back. So Pakistan are the Indian factions that wants to embrace Islam, and the Khalistan are the Punjabs, and they have their own kind of set of religion. But the Khalistanis, they want to become like a Pakistan, because Pakistan is their own country now. They used to be part of India, but the Pakistanis, they do not want to conform to the theocracy in India, which the entire Indian country is not secular. The government is not secular, right? But a lot of people in Western society somehow vilify and demonizes Canada and the United States being founded the foundation of these both countries, the United States and Canada, are founded in the principles of the Christian faith. Somehow they cannot accept that, because they say, oh, we have to be multicultural and embrace everyone. But they're not embracing everyone. They are diluting, and they're systematically erasing true Canadian heritage, which is founded on the biblical Word of God. And if you read the Trudeau Senior's sponsored Charter of Rights and Freedom, it opens with the acknowledgement that God is the supreme. Okay, you know what? I'm trying to go by memory, but let me read. Canadian. I had, but the course of this podcast is going to a sort of a different direction from what I intended, but it is going to the right direction anyway. So we're just gonna keep it this way. So I'm looking up. I have other. I had other articles I was supposed to read, but I'm looking up now the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, because the Holy Spirit directed us into this direction. So we'll just follow the leading of the Holy Spirit. All right. Okay. So I'm downloading the official Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, and this is the opening, right? The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom guarantees the right and freedoms. This is not very clear. The copy I got, I'm zooming in, but the more I zoom in, it's pixelated. Anyways, I'll do my best to read here. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantee the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. That in itself already has some questions there, because Trudeau Sr., I believe, is responsible in wording some of these. Fundamental freedoms. Number 2, everyone has the following fundamental freedom: freedom of conscience and religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinions, and expression, including freedoms of, oh man, this is so pixelated, I cannot, of the press, including freedoms of the press and other media of communication, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. That already in itself has all been assaulted by the government in 2022. But even before the guarantees of rights and freedom, this is how the entire Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom opened up. The very first line, even before introducing all of these charter stipulations, the very first line of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom goes like this: whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. The supremacy of God and the rule of law. But in Justin Trudeau's post-national Canada, first and foremost, we know that he is not a true Christian. He does not recognize the supremacy of God, maybe the supremacy of the WEF or the supremacy of King Charles, or maybe the supremacy of Klaus Schwab. We know that this is the supremacy that they ascribe to. Do you think Doug Ford subscribed to the supremacy of God? Does he recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law? As much as there are already a lot of questionable parts in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, and first and foremost, this is not a constitution, folks. I don't believe that Canada has a real independent nation-state constitution, because we are still a colony of the British Empire. There's no more British Empire, Joe. I don't know about that. Folks. Anyways, that's not what we're going to talk about today. What we're talking about today is some of these virtue signaling that the leaders of this country, provincially and federally, they think the only way that we can really muster up some Canadian pride is by either insulting the American national anthem, as demonstrated by the Toronto Raptors fans during the LA Clippers game, or removing all of the American branded beers from LCBO. Honestly, this is super pathetic, but understandably, a lot of Canadians will actually succumb and be gullible to Doug Ford's and Trudeau's patriotic virtue signaling, right? Because there's a lot of Canadians who really do not know the source and the foundation of their Canadian pride. Their Canadian pride is solely based on mundane or pathetic expression of patriotism. Overpaying their personal income tax, putting a Canadian flag in their Canadian patch on their backpack when they backpack in Europe, drinking Tim Hortons, Sing Hortons, watching hockey, saying A, eating poutine. These are the source of many Canadians' Canadian pride. That's it. That's why they're proud Canadians. But, do they have like Canadian heroes? Louis Riel. Is there a lot of English Canadians who embrace Louis Riel as a real Canadian hero? Right? When we think of American heritage, they have George Washington, right? They have who's that guy who in 1776, what's his name again? I forget. But they have so many national heroes that they can look upon that really stir up their national pride as Americans. Even in the modern day, they have, someone like Edward Snowden, right? A lot of freedomizers, they know that Edward Snowden is a patriot. They look up to some of their generals, right? General Mike Flynn, they know, or even during the Second World War, Douglas MacArthur, right? General Douglas MacArthur. These are some of the American heroes who will lay down their lives to protect the American heritage, the national identity. Talk to any Canadian. Who do you look up to? Well, maybe Wayne Gretzky or Jim Carrey or Celine Dion or Michael Bublé. These are some of the people, or Justin Bieber. These are some of the people that gives a lot of Canadians Canadian pride. Meanwhile, some of these personalities that they look up to as a source of their proud Canadian already identify themselves as Americans. Mike Myers, Jim Carrey, Celine Dion, they're all branded as Americans already. But these are the pathetic and very shallow Canadian identity. And this rebuke is for myself as a Canadian. This is a rebuke for all of us. What is it really that makes us proud Canadian? Because if we do not understand what makes us proud Canadians, then we will resort to insulting American national anthem. And a lot of Canadians don't even push back when the Hamas rallies are burning Canadian flags. What? That's happening, folks. And Canadians don't speak, they don't push back hard on those kind of things. They think it's their patriotic duty to embrace multicultural values of the world, to celebrate Islam, to celebrate Hinduism in Canada. That's their patriotic duty, is to overpay in taxes. That's their patriotic duty. And I understand that every country should buy their own Canadian products first. But here's the problem. The problem, folks, is that the leaders of this country did not support the growth of manufacturing industry in this country, that we rely on the American products as imports to fill up our shelves in the grocery store. I said this yesterday. Back in the 70s, the Canadian economy is about 35% manufacturing. And where is the manufacturing ratio in Canada now in 2025? Less than 9%. Less than 9% of our economy is manufacturing. I apologize to the offline recording. I didn't realize it. Okay, I'll fix that later. Let's get on a break. When we come back, we'll kind of put a bow on this. This is Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. Please don't go away. We'll be right back.
Consider supporting the OJTV production cost and be an insider member for only $3 a month. Go to patreon.com/OJTV Canada. Thank you for your continued support.
Canadians all across the country are sick and tired of the lies, the fear-mongering, and the hate speech they hear from the mainstream media. Download the free radio app, Freedom Fighter Radio. Click the link below, scan our QR code, join our mailing list, and get a free download of our Freedom Fighter Radio app only here on OJTV on The Ordinary Joe Show.
For the best price in town on your flooring, call Complete Flooring. The unique shop-at-home experience means samples are brought right to your door, and because we don't pay salesmen, there's no markup on our products. Complete Flooring does the installation of new hardwood floors and sands them using a dustless machine, making the sanding process cleaner. We also specialize in refinishing, staining, and custom staining of existing hardwood floors. Our Green Guard certified environmentally friendly finish is now available. Drying in a quarter of the time of regular stains means you can get back in your house sooner and it will last longer. If you're a homeowner, general contractor, or a building or property manager, Complete Flooring services are available to you. So give us a call today.
Welcome back to the Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. It's already 3:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Wednesday. It's the 5th of February. Time flies, folks. We are able to dodge the American tariffs because last minute, I can hear echoes. Last minute, on Monday night, Justin Trudeau decide that it's actually going to save his face to beg for clemency or just imitate the Mexican president. I think probably my mic battery is gonna die soon. That's why I'm hearing all of these echoes. Yep. So, folks, before the break, we were talking about I might have to change the battery. If I got cut off, folks, I'll say goodbye ahead of time because by the time I replace the battery, most of you will be gone anyways. It'll take me 5 minutes to replace the battery. But just before the break, what we were talking about is we have to understand as to our Canadian listeners on the Freedom Fighter Radio, we really need to know our history, our Canadian history, our Canadian pride, our Canadian heritage, what makes us proud as Canadians. Because unless we let that the Canadiana spirit, understanding the spirit of the Canadian national anthem, the spirit behind the rights and freedoms, as less solid as it is, we are not a nation state. We are a constitutional monarchy, but we don't have a constitution. That they said the 1867 British North American Constitution. That's not even a constitution. That's not a constitution. That's just trying to consolidate three main provinces. Folks, I'm sorry. Why is this echo? All right, I got rid of it. If we do not know why God has blessed this country and the real spiritual, emotional reason that makes us proud Canadians, then we will resort to many of these pathetic reasons or the pathetic source of our Canadian pride, such as insulting the American national anthem, taking out the choice from the open market. A real capitalistic democratic country do not have leaders who makes the choice for the consumers what to buy. You can encourage people to buy Canadian. The problem is there's probably 20% of the choices are made in Canada. In any store you go, and it's mostly pricier because of what we call economies of scale. That's an economic principle. Economies of scale. Bigger industries, the manufacturing industries that produces more of the same product can sell per unit of their products at a lot lower price than products of industries that has less manufacturing capacity. And that's how the Canadian leaders have let us down, Canadian people, because they invited many of these foreign so-called foreign direct investments, corporations who set up shop in Canada. But those corporations who set up shop in Canada pretend to be valuable for Canadians by creating jobs, but that's not the only. You can create jobs, but if you do not create supplies for the people who gets those jobs, if you do not supply the open market with Canadian products, but the leaders allowing Canadian products, Canadian made products, to dwindle and not compete properly even in our own local markets, because they say, oh, we're not anti-protectionist, we're not protectionist country. We believe in global market, globalism. That's the reason. And 30 days is not very long time, folks. The tariff is still coming, right? Trump gave Trudeau 30 days to try and come up with a better proposal. What are the things now? They're mustering up, they're rallying last minute. He has so much time to get ready for this tariff that he knows is about to come, right? But like that's another big example right there. His only source of Canadian pride is by neglecting his duty and say, we're not gonna we're not gonna beef up our military because traditionally the Americans, they don't really, the Americans, they don't take care of their own American interest, right? Many presidents passed, so it's not gonna be different when Trump gets on. So that's his Canadian pride, is to ignore the threats, or retaliate. He says, we are proud Canadians, and the way we are going to express our pride as Canadians is we're going to retaliate dollar for dollar, dollar for dollar, right? $155 billion worth of imports that we need, because we do not produce, vast majority of those imports we do not produce locally. So who's gonna pay dollar for dollar for those imports that we cannot replace with our own manufacturing? Because again, the leaders of both parties, the conservatives and the liberals, allow this to happen, that we don't have our own manufacturing industries to supply our own people's needs, right? And then you are going to threat dollar for dollar, we are going to tariff. And who's paying for the tariffs? The Canadian people. The Americans are not going to pay for the tariffs. Actually, the Americans can just choose to, okay, if you're going to tariff our products and your people not going to buy our products, we're just not going to export to you, because they have the entire world as their market. Canada is 40 million people, 40 million poorer people than the Americans. It's not going to benefit the Americans any way by exporting their products to Canada. If they choose to not export to Canada whatsoever, it will not slightly, even a tiny percent, or a quarter of 1%, or even a quarter of 1% of 1% will affect the American market in any way whatsoever. If they refuse to export to us, the only people who will be negatively affected by that is the Canadian people. Now, if they choose to not import from us, they also won't be affected by that. Both the import and the export exercise. The Canadian leaders are stupid, and unfortunately, a lot of Canadians who's listening to these stupid leaders is like the blind leading the blind here. They believe Trudeau, they believe Doug Ford, the lies that they're telling us. None of those actions that they do help any Canadians in any way whatsoever. Doug Ford taking the American liquor from the shelves doesn't help any Canadians any tiny bit. Trudeau retaliating dollar for dollar, tariffing the imports from the United States, do not only not help Canadians, but it actually sets Canadians back, because we are the ones who's going to pay the tariff that we tariff the American products on. It's only the Canadians who will be at a disadvantage, either on the import or on the export, because our leaders have let us down for decades upon decades upon decades. It's not the American. This problem was not created by the American policy. It's only created by us. That's all. Nothing else. Okay, folks, there's more about this that we are going to cover tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you for listening in. Thank you and please share. There's more about this to talk about. God bless you all. And I love you all. And please share. And we'll see you again next time. If I can find my outro here. My outro. All right, folks, you've been listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe, on a Wednesday afternoon, 3:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the 5th of February, 2025, the year of our Lord. We'll see you again tomorrow. God bless. Bye-bye.
Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up?
Whoa! Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
I am Derek Sloan, the leader of the Ontario Party. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Canada podcast, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm Pastor Arthur from Calgary. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Worldwide podcast, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes.
Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Hi, Ordinary
Mr.
Joe.
Polyev, how are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you, Ordinary Joe?